Hello there. What is going on? It is your boy Shani Sean, and Jameis Winston is now a New York Giant, signed with New York on a 2-year, $8 million deal earlier tonight. Pretty exciting stuff to see Jameis now in New York. They have two quarterbacks on the roster with him and Tommy DeVito. They'll probably add another guy either in the draft or in free agency. I know that Aaron Rodgers was visiting with the Steelers for like 6 hours today, but didn't ultimately get a deal done. So stay tuned on the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes. It seems like Minnesota is not really interested in him anymore. But I know that Aaron Rodgers has definitely had a lot of interest come his way from the Steelers, Giants, Cleveland, and Minnesota. And I believe Russell Wilson is also getting attention from all of those same teams. Minnesota should be pretty happy with J.J. McCarthy, who got hurt in the preseason last year, so he still has a lot of potential, the Michigan national champion. But at the same time, the Minnesota could definitely use another starting caliber quarterback on their roster since they lost Sam Darnold. And they were not able to retain Daniel Jones, who is now in Indianapolis, competing for a starting job with Anthony Richardson, honestly. And I think Anthony Richardson is probably going to start as long as he's healthy. He's just a far superior athlete. It's really just a matter of staying on the field for him. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'm definitely pumped to see some of these quarterback dominoes fall into place as we still wait for Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson to find their new homes. Should be pretty exciting. But like I said, Jameis Winston, 2-year deal with the Giants, $8 million. Gonna take a bite out of the Big Apple. Played 5 years in 5 years in Tampa Bay, then 4 years with the Saints, mostly just as Drew Brees' backup, and then one last year in Cleveland last year, where he actually started a decent amount. I think he started 12 games, but still did his Jameis, Jameis just being Jameis, throwing 12 touchdowns and 11 picks, something like that. So he'll hurt you, he'll help you, he's exciting to watch. I'll definitely give that. I'm a big fan of Jameis. I think he's going to be great in the media, and being in New York, he's just going to have a big spotlight on him. So Jabu Wins is now in the Big Apple. Looks like we got a Texan fan in here, so shout out to CJ Stroud and that wide receiver corps. Should be pretty exciting to see going forward. Milton Williams says that he chose the Patriots over the Panthers because they wanted me most and they made me a priority. And they also paid him a lot of money. Milton Williams is getting the largest contract in Patriots history, which is just mind-blowing to hear when you take the fact that Tom Brady was on the Patriots for, 2 decades at least? But Milton Williams looks like he was offered a lot of money by the Carolina Panthers after playing for the Philadelphia Eagles and winning a Super Bowl. Shout out, Birds. But, his agent took over, and, I think the Patriots, despite having a pretty awful season last year, are actually a more promising team than Carolina. I could be wrong, and I might take that back, but we will see.
Hey, yo, Sean!
Aaron Rodgers, like I said, visits the Steelers. They were there for 6 hours on a Friday with March Madness. So I know that their brackets are definitely busted, along with mine, which is not doing so well. But I love Amir Khan. That dude has aura out the nose. But Aaron Rodgers is still a free agent. Was with the Steelers for 6 hours Apparently, they actually have like a contract negotiated and on the deal. So I don't really know what he's waiting for at this point. Rodgers is 41, and I guess taking his time. But they said that the financial details were not discussed at this point. It's more of just fit and getting to know each other. But 6 hours is a lot of time to get to know someone. I mean, most of these college prospects have like 20 minutes on a random Saturday in Indianapolis. So it's pretty wild that Aaron Rodgers is talking to Mike Tomlin and whoever else is on the Steelers for 6 hours and leaving without a deal. But I digress. He is a former two-time MVP, Super Bowl champ. So we will see. I don't think Justin Herbert's getting traded to the Giants for first-round picks, but that wouldn't be the end of the world for either team, honestly. But the Giants are more than just one piece away. But the Giants also should be an extremely entertaining team this year with Kayvon Thibodeau, Jameis Winston, Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors might get 2,000 yards and like 20 touchdowns, while Jameis, throws for 25 touchdowns and 20 picks. But that's if he's starting. He's got Tommy DeVito on the roster, and the Giants, like I said, will probably either look to the draft. I think they have the third overall pick, or Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes. So stay tuned for all of that. Some of the moves that I've liked a lot in the free agency and offseason so far, I want to give some props to the Chicago Bears hiring Ben Johnson. I think that has been very good for the team in Chicago, and Caleb Williams. They've also really helped in free agency. They signed like 2 or 3 offensive linemen, 1 or 2 defensive linemen. They're really trying to set that dude up for success. And I wouldn't be surprised if they got Ashton Genty in the draft. I am watching Michigan State right now is up against Bryant, 5 points. So if you're watching March Madness, stay tuned for that. But like I said, really like the Chicago Bears hire of Ben Johnson and what they've been doing in free agency so far. Another move that I really like in free agency so far is the Cincinnati Bengals able to extend both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. They did this earlier this week, paying both of these guys big money and retaining Joe Burrow's targets. So that should be very nice for the Cincinnati Bengals going forward, although they could definitely re-sign Trey Hendrickson or get some more talent on that defensive side, unless they are planning on winning games 50-54 on a weekly basis. But I digress. Congratulations to Joe Burrow. He still has 2 of the best targets in the league. A great value pick that I like this offseason was the Rams going after Devontae Adams. They had about that much. I think they're paying him $22 million, which they had pretty much that much guaranteed for Cooper Kupp. So they deal Cooper Kupp to Seattle, and they still get an alpha aging wide receiver in Devontae Adams, who should fill that role nicely and play well beside Puka Nacua. The Rams are definitely trying to maximize their championship window with Matthew Stafford. They had a great pass rusher last year with Brandon Fisk and Verse. So very excited to see how the Rams develop. A big fan of Kyron Williams. I had him on my fantasy team since his rookie year, and believed in him through the rehab and liked him even coming out of Notre Dame. Really showed a lot of pass catching ability there. A move I'm not so crazy about, but the overall team's moves I like. Commanders trading for Deebo Samuel. I thought that this was a little early and premature, but they definitely did need some pass catchers for Jaden Daniels. Give me 1 second. But then they trade for But then the Commanders also traded for Laramie Tunsil to give him a little more protection. And they were even considering Brandon Ayuk. It seems like the 49ers are going to keep him and not trade both of those wide receivers. But Deebo next to Terry McLaurin should be a nice pairing. They lost De'Ami Brown, who is a very underrated wide receiver, if you ask me. So we'll see. They also got rid of Brandon Allen on defense, who I liked a lot. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think they're going to be better than the Eagles, but they will probably be the second best team in the NFC East and competitive for the foreseeable future, as long as Jaden Daniels is in the lineup and healthy. Another move that I'm not so crazy about, although they started to pick up the pieces, was the Seattle Seahawks signing Sam Darnold. I was not the biggest fan of this. I thought that Geno Smith is just as good, if not better, than Sam Darnold. I understand that he's like 4 or 5 years older, but I think that they could have stuck with Geno. I think that the Raiders are getting a great value reuniting Geno Smith with Pete Carroll, and I'm excited to see how that duo does in Vegas. But after getting Sam Darnold, they trade for Cooper Kupp, and they have a good run game. They have a pretty good defense. Seattle should still be competitive, even though they cut Tyler Lockett and traded away DK Metcalf. So expect them to probably invest in a tight end relatively early in the draft, although we will see in just a couple more weeks. Denver Broncos signed Dre Greenlaw. I love this signing for two reasons. One, I think that it gives the Broncos a lot of support on the defensive side. Really love what Bo Nix has been able to do, and excited to see how him and Sean Payton develop that Broncos team. But another reason why I like the Dre Greenlaw signing is because it makes the 49ers worse. 49ers lost Ward and Greenlaw. They cut Kyle Juszczyk and then re-signed him. But it seems like they're really just preparing to pay Brock Purdy all of the monies. So, yeah, it's a sad reality that their former Super Bowl team is now falling apart. And as an Eagles fan, I'm not upset because they're not going to be as big of a threat going forward. But the Eagles definitely have to watch out for Green Bay, the Lions, the Commanders. So there's definitely some competition in the division and the conference. The Eagles re-signed Zach Bond, which was one of the best signings, I think, in free agency. Zach Bond was incredible and sort of a defensive player of the year candidate. Wasn't going to get it just because he didn't really have the household name, but was really all over the field, won a Super Bowl. It was definitely a priority for Howie Roseman and the Birds to keep him in Philadelphia, and is now one of the highest paid linebackers in the league with a 3-year, $51 million extension. So yeah, the Eagles have definitely been taking care of their own, also giving Saquon Barkley a nice raise and a little bit of an extension, and Lane Johnson the same thing. Unfortunate for the Eagles that they lose Brandon Graham, the longest tenured player with 15 years on the team, but excited to see him enjoy retirement. And the Eagles were able to sign Azeez Ojulari in free agency, another Georgia Bulldog, to join that Georgia defense with Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Keely Ringo, Nakobe Dean, and there might be one or two other guys. But the Eagles' defense is full of Bulldogs. So yeah, moving on, the Minnesota Vikings signed Jonathan Allen. This was something I was alluding to earlier. I did not like the Commanders cutting him, but I love the signing for the Vikings. They also re-signed Aaron Jones, and we will see if they get another quarterback in that room. J.J. McCarthy should be capable of at least getting some starter reps and being the starter of the future, but if they want to take a swing on a guy like Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, an aging veteran who can show them the ropes, that would also be pretty awesome. Jameis Winston on the Giants should be fun. They will improve with him because he's just willing to throw the ball down, and Malik Neighbors might have like 2,000 yards. It's probably not going to happen, but it could. And who knows? The Giants are one of the most intriguing teams, especially when it comes to the draft as well, because at the third pick, they could either go quarterback with Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, if one of those guys falls. They could go with Travis Hunter and get a guy to play both ways, which could also be pretty awesome and extremely entertaining. And imagine Jameis Winston throwing the ball to Travis Hunter and Malik Neighbors. That would be a lot of fun. And, Jameis Winston and Travis Hunter would just be like a perfect combination, I think. But Jameis also in New York with that media should be extremely entertaining. So I'm excited about that. And then moving on to the final team that I sort of want to talk about as far as moves that I liked, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were able to re-sign Chris Godwin, even though he was getting offered a lot more money by New England. They also get a pass rusher in Hassan Reddick, who had a strange season with the Giants after being traded from Birds. So stay tuned with how these guys develop and how these moves affect these teams going forward. Let me know if you have any questions or your favorite team, and maybe I can talk a little bit about it. But Zaire Franklin of the Colts is excited for the competition with the quarterbacks in Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. Says that iron sharpens iron, and hopefully, I love Anthony, obviously being there in the trenches through the highs and lows last year, but I'm obviously supporting him and his growth. Yeah, so not a really important quote there, but yeah. I mean, the biggest news is really just the fact that Jameis signed with the Giants. Aaron Rodgers is visited with the Steelers for like 6 hours, and that's pretty much it. If you want to talk about quarterbacks in this year's draft, I am a big fan of Shedeur Sanders. I think he is the best quarterback in this year's draft. I think he's better than Cam Ward. Cam Ward has a nasty release time, though. I think at this point, Jackson Dart has cemented himself as a first-round pick, so stay tuned for that. Although I think he could also be an early second round. But I imagine that there are enough quarterback needy teams that there would be at least one or two guys that try to trade up at the end of the first round to get Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, one of these quarterbacks that could fall a little bit. And I'm a big fan of Jalen Milroe, who ran, I think, a 4.37 at his pro day in Alabama. Reminds me a lot of Jalen Hurts. Really good a deep ball thrower, and pretty good athletic. But in the NFL, might not start immediately. Probably needs to go to a team where he can be on the bench for a couple games. A sleeper quarterback that I really like is Dylan Gabriel, the Oregon quarterback, lefty. I think he's going to be, in the third round or later, but was a Heisman candidate earlier in the season and really slung the ball pretty well. Tyler Slow, the quarterback out of Louisville, has also been getting a lot of hype lately. So we'll be curious to see where he lands. I already mentioned Jalen Milroe, Alabama, one of my personal favorites. He's definitely in my top 4, probably after Shedeur, Ward, and Dart. The Syracuse quarterback, Kyle McCord, I don't know too much about him, but I think he's got that prototypical NFL body, and can sling the rock pretty well. Quinn Ewers from Texas is also coming out. He was hyped up very well early in the season, but ultimately didn't really live up to the hype and will likely be a 3rd or 4th round guy. Cam Ward, like we mentioned earlier, is the kid from Florida. Really fast release time and pretty accurate, but I think his footwork is a little bit lazy. You can see some highlights where he's literally just standing flat-footed, and I get it, he had protection and time, but I don't know. If I'm an NFL scout, which I'm not, at least yet, I want to see him take every snap like he means it, like it's his last. Maybe not like it's his last. Eagles could use a linebacker. They're okay on sort of both of those, honestly. They could use a safety. Malachi Starks, the Georgia safety. If he fell to 32, that would be epic. That might be wishful thinking. But I wouldn't be surprised if they built in the trenches. They're not going to get a linebacker in the first round, especially after just paying Zach Bond all the money and Nakobe Dean having such a good year. And I think Oren Burks left in free agency, so maybe get a third or fourth guy. But the Eagles should be pretty pleased with what Dean and Bond have been able to do. The Ohio State quarterback in Will Howard is also a pretty nice prospect. National champion, but we will see. Edge rushers, the Eagles got Azeez Ojulari. They have Jalix Hunt. And, Huff is still on the team. They might get rid of him at some point, but big fan of Jackson Dart going back to the quarterbacks. In my top 3 or 4, has definitely been rising on a lot of these quarterback boards or ratings, but was also on my radar in September this year. So that's nice. Good God, baby. Mark FX, send me some money. But like I've mentioned a couple times earlier on this stream, Shedeur Sanders is my favorite quarterback in this year's draft. I really like his accuracy. I like his release time. I think that his O-line didn't really give him that much time to sling the ball. So it'll be interesting to see if one of these teams like the Giants or the Raiders, guys who just brought in vets, go for a quarterback. We are not taking a break yet. Hear me out. Eagles first team to three-peat. The Patriots, I'm pretty sure had a three-peat at one point. But yeah, it would be awesome if the Eagles do it. They were the three-peat stompers when it comes to the Chiefs and the Patriots. Eagles won in between 2 Patriots Super Bowls, and the Chiefs won 2, and they were talking all this trash about trying to win 3, and we rewrote history, and the Eagles won 40-22. Check out the music video on YouTube. Go Birds. But yeah, I'm excited for the NFL draft. I would imagine that if you're an Eagles fan, they're probably going to trade back in the first round, mostly because Howie Roseman likes to accumulate more assets, and the Eagles have 20 first-round picks in the next 2 years, which is ridiculous, but they've really been taking advantage of the compensatory pick compensation, I guess is how you say it. And I think that stems a lot from Weidel and Joe Douglas when they were with the Eagles a couple years ago. The Ravens were one of the first teams to really take advantage of the compensatory pick strategy and accumulating those assets, and then the Eagles brought in some executives from those teams, and now Howie Roseman uses that to his full advantage. And I'm not complaining. The Eagles, I saw on Instagram, someone was saying the Eagles should solve the Cowboys' problems and trade some of those picks away for Micah Parsons. I think that would actually be pretty awesome and great for both teams. Definitely a hot take, but getting one of the best young pass rushers who went to Penn State and is from the area to some level in on this Super Bowl winning team that is ready to win now, as opposed to using all those draft picks, would be pretty nice. It seems like wishful thinking and extremely unlikely, but I digress. I think the Eagles have a better chance of getting Abdul Carter, who's projected to be a top 3 pick in this year's draft, the pass rusher from Penn State. But yeah, he's probably not. Neither of those guys is probably going to be an Eagle. And for all we know, Azeez Ojulari may have found his new home with the Birds and could shore up that spot that BG is leaving behind. But thank you, BG, for an amazing career and all your service as a Philadelphia Eagle over 15 seasons. We will miss you as the longest tenured player on the team, although now that honor goes to Lane Johnson. So Stone Cold Lane Johnson Day was a couple days ago. He signed an extension. It was literally the day after Stone Cold Steve Austin Day, 3/16, 3/17. So kind of funny. Lane Johnson was also part of WrestleMania last year, which was pretty entertaining to see him and Kelsey on the stage. They didn't really do so much wrestling, but I think that's more just because, contracts and injuries and all that. Whatever. But yeah, we might not go on too much longer. Really just wanted to talk a little bit about the Jameis Winston signing. I'm pretty excited to see him in New York, but very curious to see how things play out there. Tet McMillan is not the receiver you think he is. What is this headline? I think he is the wide receiver. I think he is. I think he's very good. He's very big. He's very strong. He's probably the best wide receiver in this year's draft, although Travis Hunter and Luther Burden are also extremely talented. But this is not really the best wide receiver draft. This is a very good running back draft, though. There are 4 or 5 guys that could be first or second round picks. I know that Omarion Hampton from UNC is very good. Ashton Genty from Boise State might be a top 5 guy. The 2 running backs from Ohio State and Travion Henderson and Quinshawn Jenkins are very good. Iowa State has a good running back. I think Virginia Tech even has a really good running back. I'm sorry that I'm starting to miss out on these names. I think even Pitt has a good running back. So stay tuned for those guys and where they land. I'm sure I'll learn a little bit more about their teams and their skill sets and watch their tape at some point. But right now I'm still coming off that Super Bowl high and not complaining about it. So go Birds, baby. What is going on here? Birds running back. Birds running it back. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Someone in the comments earlier said that the Birds might have a chance at a three-peat, and I don't want to disagree. I think it's very possible. They've got most of their offense and defense returning. The fact that they have Jalen, Saquon, AJ, and Devontae signed for the next 4 years or so is pretty incredible. Half their O-line is still there. So the Eagles are definitely, gonna sit at the top or remain we'll call it kings of the NFL for now. They just won a Super Bowl and embarrassed the Chiefs in that game. It was 34-0 before the Chiefs scored their first touchdown, and they had already dumped Gatorade on Nick Sirianni before Mahomes threw that dagger to Xavier Worthy. But pretty pumped to see how the NFL draft shapes out. Let's talk about some of the running backs that I was just going with. Quinshawn Jenkins, Ohio State, one of the fastest. RJ Harvey from UCF, don't know much about him. Brashard Smith, SMU, pretty good. Jaden Blue, Texas, pretty good. Travion Henderson, very good. Probably going to be a second-round pick. And then Raheem Rocket Sanders, South Carolina. Both Carolinas have a good running back, apparently. And this is the Virginia Tech guy I was talking about in Bayshul Tutton. Or Tootin? I don't know. He's tootin', baby. Makes him go faster. Air propulsion, jet propulsion. But the best running back in this draft is definitely the Boise State kid. He was just pretty unbelievable this year. But that is probably going to wrap things up for today. Hope you enjoyed the stream. If you missed any of it, please check me out on YouTube and subscribe here, there, wherever, and check out some Fanatics merchandise. They have the best official merchandise for all of your favorite teams, college and the pros, and we are watching March Madness, so I'll let the madness continue as Jameis Winston is now in the Big Apple and the Birds are still Super Bowl champs. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, we will see you.